Diplomats, the salesmen of America. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the competitive edge of US diplomacy. Now, what competitive advantage can the best negotiator coming from the best school create on behalf of the strongest country on the planet? Well, in this episode, you're going to find out how the international alliances that the US diplomats have created over the centuries, how they may be the one thing that can save the world.
It's my turn now.
And ironically, is the one thing that the US is stepping away from. Hi, this is Joseph Zhang. I'm the managing partner here at Zhang & Associates, where we solve legal problems with creative solutions. Today, we're going to start with Asian NATO, otherwise known as the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, because this might be the best example of the power of US diplomacy. Now, the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue is basically a coalition between four countries: the United States, India, Japan, and Australia. Now, what is the purpose of this coalition? Even though it's not specifically outlined in their mission statement, it's pretty clear that every participating member is holding some kind of grudge against China, which is mainly why the alliance was formed in the first place. And India and China have been fighting over their border for the past 60 years, which very recently resulted in the death of 20 Indian soldiers. Japan and China haven't reconciled since World War II. There's still a lot of bad blood between those two countries. And I have absolutely no idea why Australia has a problem with China other than some political reasons and some trade issues, but they're angry. So maybe if you guys know why Australia's pissed, please leave a comment below. And so since all four countries appear to have this shared interest, let's just call it, the US decided to form an alliance and make life as difficult as they can for China. And that's just one coalition, not to mention Hong Kong, Taiwan, Philippines, South Korea, or any other territories that might want to start beef with their common enemy, China. And that's just one example of what US diplomacy can do. If they don't like a particular country, all they have to do is assemble other countries that share a common interest against that country and form a little coalition and alliance, and that will make your trading life a living hell. This has Mean Girls vibes written all over it.
Regina George. How do I even begin to explain Regina George?
Can you imagine if another country tried to do the same thing to the US? It would be like the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again. And that is the situation China is in right now. And this perfectly exemplifies the competitive edge, the diplomatic power that the United States has. So how did the US get this kind of diplomatic might? Well, for most of US history, the United States has more embassies and consulates in the world than any other country, and it is most recently tied with China. But not all embassies and consulates are created equal. Think of it like storefronts, right? Now, US and China is tied for the most number of stores all over the world, selling their own brand, United States and China. But that doesn't mean they're gonna have the same sales, right? One of the most important things that every country needs to do is to create long-lasting partnerships with other countries, and sometimes with multiple countries at once. They're called treaties, they're called conventions. In the world of business, they're called joint business ventures. And the US has more international treaties and conventions than any other country. And those are just the big ticket items, not to mention the individual business contracts between a government and another government, and the businesses within that country and the US businesses. You see, that's the role of a diplomat in another country trying to foster trade and agreement and shared interest between the countries. And over the past 20 years, the world is getting more flat, with everyone becoming much more interconnected and interdependent. And that leads us to why the US has such a diplomatic leverage, because everybody is much more dependent on trade than ever before. And just how important are these treaties and conventions and these business partnerships between the countries? Well, they're vital to the country's survival. Think about how important it is for Uber to have access to Google Maps. Without Google Maps, can Uber even function as a company? It'll be worthless. So over the past 200 years, the US has been hard at work creating these international alliances and conventions and partnerships between these different countries. And that's not a bond that's easily broken. But that's not the only thing that the US diplomats have been hard at work creating. They've also been building some of the biggest international organizations that govern the world, such as the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, the United Nations, the World Court, and a host of others. And so what happens when you know the needs of every other country and everybody looks to you for help, not just military, philanthropy, and business? You kind of become the godfather.
That I cannot do.
All right, so let's do a competitor analysis now. If you're another country and you don't like the way the US is running the show and having all these intricate alliances, and you want to create your own coalition, making other countries more dependent on you, what are you going to do? Well, no other country has created anything that can rival the diplomacy that the US has, other than what China is trying to do.
This is China's Belt and Road Initiative, the most ambitious infrastructure project in modern history that's designed to reroute global trade. And it's how China plans to become the world's next superpower.
As you can see, this is one of the most important things to China's 10-year plan, creating a trade route so that other countries in Europe and in Africa would be more dependent on China. We see the same thing in business all the time. One company dominates a particular market, another company wants to break in. What do? They heavily invest in their R&D, research and development, or they heavily invest in sales, or they give a huge discount to try to win some of the customers. And just like business, there's no guarantee it's going to work. The only guarantee is how much it's going to cost. And in this case, it's going to cost over $1 trillion for them to invest in this project. And this is already the best example of another country investing their backbreaking GDP investment just to get a seat at the table, to compete against US diplomacy. And what is the United States of America doing while China is doubling down on their diplomatic efforts? Well, they're pulling out of the Paris Agreement and the World Health Organization. So while other countries are just trying to get a seat at the table to come up with a better agreement, the US is picking and choosing which agreement they want to be a part of. And if they no longer like it, it's no longer in their favor, they pull out. It's unheard of. And that is the competitive advantage of US diplomacy. Just think of it in terms of your fantasy football league. Imagine if US was just one of the players, but they get the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth pick. And then they can reverse a trade anytime they want, even though it happened later on. And then if they don't like Tommy, they could just tell you, hey, nobody else trade with Tommy anymore. So how can anyone realistically compete? Now, all of this might sound great, but there's one alarming thing that we need to watch out for, and that's the trend towards nationalism, the philosophy where each nation pulls inward towards itself, breaking the ties with international communities, putting itself above others. We saw that with Brexit, and we're seeing that with the US, and other countries are beginning to follow suit. Now, the problem with nationalism isn't that you're putting your national self-interest first and other countries' interests second. That's fine. That's just standard international trade. But what we are afraid of is if every country pulls out of these international organizations that US diplomats help form, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, the Paris Climate Agreement, these organizations and treaties are put in place so that all countries work together to solve a common good. And so if America continues down this road of nationalism and pulls out of these key international treaties and dissolves these key alliances and international organizations, then there will be no longer a check and balance against the US government. And that's not a good thing. You don't want to be the one big guy and nobody able to check you, because all you have to do is have one bad actor, maybe not now, maybe not 5 years later, but maybe sometime down the road. If there's one mistake, one bad faith actor, the US government can literally destroy the world. So the ironic thing is that the only thing that can save the world is the US alliances that the US helped create. And yet it is the one thing that the US is stepping away from. And you see, the problem with nationalism is that not all problems can be solved within your own borders. Something like the pandemic is something that all countries need to work together, because at the end of the day, we're all living on this little wet blue ball together. We only have one earth. And I know nobody really likes the Electoral College. Why should one person have way more voting rights than everyone else? But in a very, very real sense, every American serves as the Electoral College to vote this coming November 3rd, because who you choose may very well determine the fate of the world. And that's it. Thank you for watching today's video. I know it was really heavy, but it's really important. This is the 7th episode in our series, Let's Talk America, where we analyze the competitive edge of the United States. If you like what you see, please smash that like button and subscribe. We're constantly making these videos. We're releasing 2 every week leading up to the election. So until the next one, see you later. Bye-bye.